Three bows to the Buddha. First bow. Second bow. Third bow. And bow to the teacher.
All right. Good evening from Indonesia and good morning for you all who are in the States. I'm gonna share my screen. All right, welcome back. This is the second day of the retreat. Thank you for staying with me um, at a very early morning time during the Sunday, right? And we are going to continue on this topic, early Bodhisattva practices. So a little bit review from yesterday. We've talked about the Diamond Sutra. There are two different interpretation of the title itself called the Diamond Sutra. So what is the diamond? So if we contrast the translation between Xuanzang and Kumarajiva, we can see that Xuanzang's translation is leaning toward that the diamond is the thing that is cut. And then Kumarajiva translation is that saying the diamond is the thing that cut through the defilements. So, but from the original Sanskrit text itself, there is no Vajra, there is no diamond in the text actually. It just says this Dharma named the perfection of wisdom. So where does this diamond appear? It appears in one of the chapter in the larger Prajna Paramita Sutra, translated by Xuanzang. So that's where the diamond comes from. And then because of the Sanskrit compound, we can interpret it differently according to what your take, cutting by diamond or cutting of diamond. But like what I said yesterday, this understandings works both ways because diamond is the hardest substance on earth, and the only thing that can cut through the diamond is the diamond itself. Another diamond cuts through another diamond. So if you understand the diamond as the wisdom, right, the wisdom perfection or the wisdom of the Buddha that can cut through all the defilements in ourselves, then this diamond must be really, really strong to cut through all our defilements. And if you understand the diamond as the defilements, right, we have all these defilements with us for many, many times since no beginning until no end, up until we achieve the Buddhahood. So it means that these defilements is very strong, right? It has rooted down in our mind somewhere in our life. That's why we are still just a normal people and not a sage. So since these defilements is so hard to get rid of, it's so hard to eradicate, we need something else that is equally strong or maybe a little bit stronger than defilement to cut through this. And that thing is the perfection of wisdom, or is the wisdom of the Buddha. So it actually works both ways. So we don't have to worry about the difference of the title. And then yesterday we have also talked about the structure of the Diamond Sutra. It is divided into two paths. The first one is the path of wisdom, consists of three steps or three body. The first one is resolution, the second one is mind control, and the third one is mental enlightenment. And then the other path, which is the path of the sage, a bodhisattva, we call it the seventh stage of a bodhisattva, a high level bodhisattva, or what we call it mahasattva, bodhisattva, mahasattva, they undergo this path of skillful means, where they try to eradicate even the subtle defilements that remain up until they achieve the Buddhahood. So it consists of three bodies as well. The first one is mental enlightenment. So if you can see from the chart here, mental enlightenment is the last body of the path of wisdom, but also the first body of the path of skillful means. And then the second body in this path is mental expansion. And then lastly is supreme body, which is the stage of Buddhahood itself. So three on the left, three on the right, actually they consist of input, process, output, input, process, output. By input, I mean the beginning, the resolution. In almost every Buddhist practice, especially Mahayana, we always start the practice of any kind, even whether it's reciting a sutra, meditation, or even your own personal practice in your own life. We always begin with the resolution. The resolution of what? Usually we call it bodhicitta, the aspiration to achieve the enlightenment, and at the same time, the vow or the aspiration to save all sentient beings. We'll cover that in a moment. And then by process, I mean that what should we do next after we aspire from the first step? And then after we practice, there comes the result. There comes the attainment. So in the path of wisdom, the attainment is the higher level bodhisattva, which is marked by the non-retrogression stage, in which at this stage, mental enlightenment, a bodhisattva cannot retrogress into the non-bodhisattva path, or what we call into Sravakayana. So up until this point, a bodhisattva cannot decide, oh, I don't want to become a Buddha. I just want to become an arhat, and that's it. It cannot happen anymore. And a bodhisattva cannot fall into the lower realm of existence. So a bodhisattva cannot fall into hell, into animal realms, into hungry ghost realms, into the demon or asura realm. And then after they attain such stage, a bodhisattva would continue onto the skillful means path, where at this time, a bodhisattva will aspire again, will make a resolution for the second time as a sage. So this stage here mark a distinction between common people and the sagehood. So sagehood is not a thing that like on or off, you're either a regular person or a fully sage person, but it's rather even in the stage of the sagehood, one should achieve the Buddhahood step by step, or what we call gradually enlightened. Even if someone has already a sage, they still have to undergo a certain training until they are fully enlightened. It's just the same like the Sravakayana, like the Arahant path. We have the four sagehoods, right? We have the stream enterer, we have the one returner, we have the non-returner, and then we have the Arahant stage. So even though the stream enterer, the Sotapanna stage, is already considered a sage, right? But they are not like fully 100% purified. They still have to undergo a certain stages to complete their path. So they aspire for the second time as a sage to achieve the Buddhahood. and then to save all being. But this time is a little bit different because the things get real. They have to really save all sentient beings. So if in this first body, the resolution body, the aspiration is merely kind of, thought experiment happening in the mind that if I am able to save all beings, I will. But since my ability is limited, right, I can only save so many, and then that's it. But then at this stage, right, they have to really save all sentient beings, literally as many as possible, because they have this supernatural power already. The wisdom is considered ripened already, and many other means or tools that they need to use to save all beings are there already. So if you think about Guan Yin or Bodhisattva Avalokitesvara, who hear the cries of the world, well, he or she, Guan Yin, right? Bodhisattva Avalokitesvara, depending on which version are you in. The Chinese or East Asian version is a female, but then in the Indian version, Avalokitesvara is a male, will save all sentient beings by his or her own efforts and powers. And then the process is the same. They have to do the practice up until the ultimate result of the practice, which is the fruition of the Buddhahood or become a Buddha themselves. So this is basically the framework of the Diamond Sutra, but we're not gonna go into sentence by sentence of the sutra. We're just gonna draw some of the practical aspect of the each body, right? Even though it's not in the process, it's not in the practice part, but we can still have some practical aspects in it. Okay, before we move into the content, there are some remarks that I need to make. The most obvious one, when you happen to read the Diamond Sutra, you'll encounter this repeated pattern. A is not A, therefore A is called A. So for example, throughout the sutra, we'll see sublime Buddha lands are not sublime, therefore they are called sublime. Another one, the Tathagata or the Buddha teaches that worlds are not worlds, therefore they are called worlds. And then we also have what the Tathagata calls the greatest transcendence is not the greatest transcendence. Therefore, it is called the greatest transcendence. So what is happening with all of this repeated pattern throughout the sutra? None of what the Tathagata calls thoughts are actually thoughts, therefore they are called thoughts. So the pattern is A is not A, right? You've said that it is not A, and then the conclusion is therefore A is called A. So is A and A or not, right? And the way to understand this pattern, for example, let's say in one of the sentences, it says, merit has no nature of merit. Therefore, merit is great. So the breakdown is, the first A here is the starting point of the discussion. So when we say merit in the first word, we are setting up the starting point. Okay, now we are going to discuss the merit. Okay, what happened with the merit? In the ultimate sense, in the ultimate reality, this A has no self-nature. A is just a compound of other things. But then in the conventional sense, this A is just a designated name only. So we have to understand it in two ways. One is from the perspective of the ultimate reality, and then the second one is the convention of reality. Okay, so conventional reality is used for everyday conversation, even though the Buddhist teaching teaches us about the non-self, no I, right? But then in a conversation, we always say, I think, I want. Even the Buddha himself says, I blah, 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 something and something else. So it doesn't mean that the I really exists. It just means that for the purpose or for the sake of communication, we need something. We need to name something, designate it, a name into that thing. But then in the ultimate reality, the thing itself has no self nature, right? So we need these two ways of thinking. In the conventional sense, we have name only. So merit, for example, exists by the designated name only. So this thing is called merit, right? And even the name itself is not permanent, is not unchangeable, because in English, we call it merit, right? In Chinese, we call it 福德. What else? In Spanish, we call it what? And in any other languages, we call it differently. So even the name of something is changing. So there's nothing permanent in this world. And then on the right side, the ultimate reality, right? The ultimate meaning the real, the things as they really are is emptiness. So we have encountered this term a lot, especially in the Mahayana Buddhism. What does it mean by emptiness? Empty plus ness, making it an abstract noun. So in understanding emptiness, we cannot just merely understand it as empty, like nothing, non-existent. No, something is like exist, but they're not real. So that's why we have to understand emptiness in the sense of empty of what. And in this Buddhist term, it is empty of self-nature. Meaning, if you try to dissect a thing to find the core, you'll find nothing. Even though our science today that says atom, right, or electron, atom, right, is the smallest unit in the world. But then maybe a couple years later, scientists will find another even smaller particle, smaller than atom. But then if we imagine 100 years, 1,000 years from now, what would it be? It'll just not be atom or whatever we'll find next. And then if things keep, we keep discovering a new smallest particle on a thing, it means that actually Buddhism is close to the truth, right? Because whatever the scientists or the science find today doesn't represent the ultimate reality yet. We have our limit in understanding things, and the Buddha has this perfection of wisdom to see things as they are, way beyond any science. And so empty of self-nature, we find no core in almost everything. So merit itself has no inherent nature. It is made up of a lot of things. One of them is karma, our action. When we do something, whether it's from our bodily action, mind, or speech, will leave a trace. And that trace is called karma. A good karma is called merit, right? A bad karma is called bad karma. And it will have a result in the future. So this merit alone cannot stand by itself, just exist by itself. It needs our action, it needs the agent, which is our self, this person, and then it needs the object of our action in order to produce merit. So another way to explain this is from the Sanskrit grammar. In understanding what we call a compound, we have these two ways of understanding, right? The first one is karma dharaya, because in the original Sanskrit text, it's written something like apunya, like non-punya. So it consists of a, the negation, plus the word punya, which is merit. So how do I understand this? The first one is what we call karma dharaya, which is not X or non-X. So if we are saying sentient beings are not sentient beings, it means that the sentient beings are not beings at all. It means non-existent. So A is not A, meaning that it is something else. It's not this, but it is something else. What is it? That's the thing that we need to figure out. But the things that we see in the world is not that thing. So what it is, it's something else. That is what it means by not X or non-X. But then the other way of understanding is called bahuvrihi, meaning having no X or X less. If you are saying sentient beings is not a sentient being, therefore it's called sentient beings, it means that sentient beings have no inherent nature. So non-sentient being here is understood as having no inherent nature or selfless, lack a self or an essence, and have no core ontologically. If we try to find what is the core of ourself as a person, other religions will say we have this thing called soul, or in Hinduism, they might call Brahma, right? The bigger self is called Brahman, and then the little self in each individual is called Atman, or soul, or self. But then, according to Buddhism, there is no such thing. So even though things exist, you can see me, the computer in front of you really exists, but they're not real, meaning they have no core essence, thus empty of self-nature. But they exist, right, as a name only. And then emptiness or no essence actually makes things in the world possible. Because if you think about it, if we have core, we will not or cannot change. If our core is good, let's say, we are born good ontologically. Our core, our cells are all good. Then we are destined to be good. There's no way for us to change into a bad person, right? And then if we are born bad or evil, right? Like other religions say we are born with sin. If we have that nature, we have that core in ourselves, then there is no way we can change, we can practice, and even to become a Bodhisattva or a Buddha. But because we have this no essence, things will get flexible and changes are possible. Since things can rise and die, change or transformation, either progress or regress, is possible with emptiness. So if you think about it, emptiness is not something pessimistic. It is really optimist way of thinking, right? You are not destined to be bad, right? You're not destined to suffer forever in your life. There is a chance to change because we are born with no self-core nature. So if you do good, if you listen to the Dharma, practicing the Dharma, make change in your life, then transformation will eventually come, right? So there is a way to practice this kind of thinking according to Nagarjuna's treatise, which is what we usually call the three designation. We work with three steps or three levels to understand the emptiness. So the first one is what we call name only. All things exist by name only. So for example, we call this computer, it only exists as a name. It's called computer, or in Chinese, 电脑. And in other language, they have their own name, their own language. It is name only. But then if you investigate further, well, is it computer only? Is it only name that's left on this thing? No, it's not. It actually exists. I can touch on the computer. It's hard, right? I can touch the screen, or it's a little bit soft. And then if I try to open all the components inside the computer, I can see a lot of things inside. Here, it brings us to the second step, which is what we call the grasping onto the compound. So now on the first step, we already know that, okay, I understand that it's just a name, but then the thing really exists as a compound. Like the computer is a combination of metal, plastic, and all the small electronic, components inside, all the chips, all the memory, all the electricity inside, making it a computer. Those little tiny bits, components are real. So if we stop here, we are in the fault because we need to go down one step further to understand that this second step, like the compound, is not real also. Then it brings us to the third step, that even the smallest particles, like in Buddhism, we know five aggregates that made us a human, consists of forms, right? Our feelings, our thoughts, our mental volitions, and consciousness make us a person. But then, even though in the mainstream Buddhism, these five aggregates, 12 senses, 18 elements of cognition, in the mainstream Buddhist literature or in a Abhidharma school of thought, these things are considered real. So the smallest unit in Buddhism, according to Abhidharma school, are these things. So the five aggregates are real, Nirvana is real, the 12 senses are real, and even our four main elements, fire, water, wind, earth, are real. But then according to Mahayana, especially this school of Mahayana, Madhyamaka school, even this, what so-called the smallest particles in Buddhism, are actually not real, because let's say fire element, we can further divide it, and then it is empty of self nature. It cannot rise by itself. It needs a lot of combination here and there to make the fire happen. So the fire itself is cannot be considered real according to the Diamond Sutra and the perfection of wisdom school. So having understood these three designation, these three steps of contemplating the name only or emptiness, we are left with nothing. But then we have to be very careful on this school of thoughts, because when we think that we are left with nothing, we are still in the fault. Because whether it is nothing or it is not nothing, you cannot really say it. When you try to build anything, even on your mind, that, okay, I am free from anything already, I am entering into the nothingness, into the emptiness, it is false too, right? So we have to get rid of everything, don't think about it, just focusing on the practice is by rejecting or neglecting every mental construction that arises in our mind. All right, so let's get into the text. So this is the introduction. it says that thus I've heard, once the Buddha was staying in the Jetavana grove in Sravasti with a community of 1,250 monks. Then at mealtime, the world-honored one put on his robe, took his bowl, and went into the great city of Sravasti to seek alms food, going from house to house within the city. Finishing, he returned home and took his meal. He then put away his robe and bowl, washed his feet, arranged his seat, and sat down. And some commentaries will say that actually the whole Diamond Sutra finished here. Just one sentence, it already speaks the whole spirit of the Diamond Sutra. Why? Because if you look at the content here, the Buddha, right? First, he put on the clothes, the robe, right? And then he seeks for alms food, and then eat, and then wash his feet, arrange his seat, and sat down. So like us today, right? When we wake up in the morning, we put on our clothes, take our phone and wallet, pick up our foods at the restaurant, go back home, wash our hands, sit down, eat, and finish. What is this telling us? It's telling us that before any spiritual journey, have your life together first. So I just want to mention that since our class is in the morning, early morning at 8 o'clock, have you had your coffee? Have you had your breakfast? Have you taken a shower before you attend today's class? Because it's really, the sutra at some point is really down to earth. We don't want you to abandon your family, your duty, your responsibilities just in order to rush into listening to Dharma, into meditation session, right? Into the retreat without having done your responsibilities yet. So what Buddhism wants us to do is before any spiritual journey, settle down all your responsibilities first. That's the first thing that we need to do. Otherwise, it'll be useless because at one point you'll think you are an expert already in Buddhism, but that at one point um, you abandon your family, you don't care about even your own life, you don't care if you're full, if you have eaten already or not, right? It's not the case if we want to learn and practice Buddhism. Everything needs to be put into consideration and taken care of. And then Subhuti, which is the main character in the sutra, asked the Buddha, when good sons and good daughters seek utmost perfect enlightenment, in what should they abide and how should they subdue their thoughts? So here we have two main questions. The first one is how to behave according to Dharma. And then the second one is how to purify one's mind. And then right after this, we are entering into the first body, which is the resolution in the path of wisdom. So the Buddha's answer is, if you look at this text, it says the Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas should subdue their thoughts like this. All the different types of sentient beings, and then you skip here. This is the main sentence. I will save them by causing them to enter nirvana without remainder. So this is the aspiration to save all sentient beings. What kind of sentient beings? Whether they be born from eggs, womb, moisture, or spontaneously, whether or not they have form, whether they abide in perceptions or no perceptions, without either perception or non-perceptions. And then the way or the motivation to save them is that we have to understand that no sentient beings has attained liberation, because if a bodhisattva abides in the science of self, person, sentient being, or lifespan, she or he is not a bodhisattva. So about the different types of being, we have based on the birth, we have egg, womb, moisture, spontaneous. So egg, mostly animals, will save them. Womb, human and animals as well. Moisture, mostly insects. And spontaneous. What spontaneous? What beings are born spontaneously? It is the deities, the hell beings, and ghost realm. Those beings are born spontaneously. So they, even though they have parents, but the way they are born is just, you're just suddenly there. So if one day we are happen to die and then we are reborn to, let's say, heavenly realm, we are reborn there, not through the womb, just like human, but you just suddenly appear there. These four kinds of beings based on birth, a bodhisattva will save them by making them to follow the Buddha's path and to attain nirvana. But and then the second type is based on the physical body. So this is related about the Buddhist cosmology. We have the desire realm, form realm, and then the formless realm. Usually these two realms are the higher heavenly realm that is obtained through meditation stages. And then the third one is the based on the mind. So there are beings with mind, like human is included in this. Without mind, no perception or non-perception. This is the one of the jhana stage. And then we also have the four notions of self. And in this sutra, it is repeatedly said that we cannot abide in the four notions of self, namely self, person, sentient being, and lifespan. So these four notions are actually another terms for self, for Atman. And when we say self, it means that we have the ability to control our life, which in fact we do not have that ability. That's why the Buddha teaches us that there is no self. And then person is also another term from different approach to understand self, meaning we as a person who lives in the human realm exist, which we need to get rid of. And then third one is the sentient being, which possess of body and mind. It doesn't necessarily limit it to the person, but it can be applied to all other beings other than person that consists of five aggregates: animals, deities, ghosts, and then possess of life as the fourth one. So these are the four notions of self that we have to be aware of, not necessarily just aware of this non-self, but person, sentient being, lifespan. And if you've heard about a philosopher says, there's one philosopher that says, I think, therefore I exist. It implies that having a mind or having a consciousness making us exist and real, which is not the case in Buddhism. Okay, so the resolution body by aspiration, according to Venerable Yin-Shun, we need to have these three minds for our actions to be considered a bodhisattva or a perfection, the practice of bodhisattva. We need these three minds as the requirement. The first one is bodhicitta, or thought of enlightenment or aspiration. Aspiration of what? As we've seen before, two aspirations. The first one is to aspire to become a Buddha. And then the second one is to aspire to save or liberate all beings. This is the first, very beginning step that all Mahayana practitioners have to make. And then the second requirement is great compassion. if we do something good without great compassion, it's not considered a Mahayana practice. It's just a worldly good deeds. It's just a regular kindness. So here we are talking about Mahayana path. We are talking about Bodhisattva path. Our bar, our standard is a little bit higher, right? We know that kindness itself is good already. There's nothing wrong with kindness or worldly good deeds. But in the Bodhisattva practice, we need something higher, something that is more than the worldly standard. So we need to have this great compassion when doing anything. And then the third one is the main theme in our sutra, which is the non-abiding wisdom. So what wisdom? Free from the four notions of self. And the bodhicitta here is the pre-input. We need to have this kind of mind in the back of our head when starting to practice the bodhisattva path. And then our input or our motivation to practice the path is because of the great compassion that we have toward all beings. And then the process, the means, the way when we do the practice, we need to know, we need to be free from the four notions of self. And then after we undergo the input process, there must be an output. So the pre-input and the output itself is actually the same. We actually becoming a Buddha, and we are actually saving beings. So the pre-input process, the pre-input part is kind of just an aspiration. Just like when you are little, you wanted to become a pilot, a doctor, all your dreams about what you want to be when you grow up. That is just the pre-input, right? You don't really do that kind of thing yet. You're just accumulating all your knowledges and experience, directed all those things toward your goal. But then after the process and everything, you're finally become the real thing that you want to be. You realize your goal. So this is the whole process. And then what is the great compassion though? The larger Prajnaparamita Sutra gives us one explanation among many explanations in the text. One of them is, so here, what is the manifestation of great compassion of Bodhisattva Mahasattva? That is such a Bodhisattva Mahasattva who is practicing the practice of Bodhisattva thinks that here's the main thing. For the sake of every single being, will I roast in the hells for eons countless as the sands of the Ganges, until that being has been established in the Buddha wisdom. This fortitude, this persistence for the sake of even a single being is the manifestation of great compassion. So we do this all kinds of good things for the sake of other being in order for them to be in the path of the Buddha. So not for our own sake, right? So here is such a pretty kind of great spirit, because who wants to be roasted in hells just for one single being that we don't really know them, but a bodhisattva will do this kind of thing just because of the compassion. And even our Buddha himself also does the same thing by undergoing a lot of suffering through eons and eons in order to become a Buddha and teach us. Okay, the second body is mind control, which is the practice. What is the practice here prescribed in the Diamond Sutra? Actually, it's just one practice that covers all the perfection. One practice as an example, but also as the real thing to be practiced. And then it will cover all this other five perfection or six. So the practice is giving perfection or dana or generosity. So it says in the sutra that by doing only one single giving, we have fulfilled other five perfections, including the giving perfection itself. And the way to understand this is there are three types of givings. The first one is wealth giving, when you donate money, food, medicines to the poor people, to monastics, to the monastery. These are all considered the wealth giving. And this is the first perfection called giving perfection, the real giving perfection. But then we have the second type of giving, which is non-fear giving. And by doing this, we give non-fear to someone else. So this is the practice of morality and patience perfection. By this, it means that when we observe our precepts, for example, no killing, when we abstain from killing, it means that we give non-fear to other beings, because other beings won't be threatened, won't feel any, will not afraid of us, will not afraid of getting killed by us, because we already observe the precept of non-killing. And then we have the Dharma giving, which is sharing the Dharma, teaching the Dharma to others. This is all energy, concentration, and wisdom perfections. So by only doing the giving perfection, all the other five or six perfections are done at the same time because of the different types of givings. And then when doing the giving perfection, we need to have this wisdom perfection. And this wisdom is called the triple pure giving. For example, when we are giving something to someone, we don't want to think that I am the giver, you are the receiver, and I have given you foods, for example. So we need to be aware. We don't want to grasp or cling into the notion that, see, I've done so many good deeds, and you've received a lot of good deeds from me, right? So we need to get rid from all of these kinds of thinking by using this triple pure giving. If we can accomplish this type of giving by understanding that there's no donor, there's no beneficiary, there's no things given, or the act of giving itself will do things really sincerely and without grasping, and the merits will be incalculable. And then here we have the text in the Ekottara Agama that says another way to explain how many dharmas does a bodhisattva mahasattva fulfill to complete six perfections when practicing the perfection of giving and quickly achieve the Buddhahood. So even in the mainstream text, this is not a Mahayana text, this is a mainstream text, like a very general, very early text. They already have this kind of content similar to what we've just seen. By only practicing the perfection of giving, it fulfills the other six perfections. So there are four requirements in order for the giving perfection to fulfill all the six perfections. First, one should give equally without differentiation among whether that person is a Buddha, Pacceka Buddha, ordinary person, thinking all beings rely on foods to survive. Without foods, they'll die. So no impartial, no partial thinking, right? No differentiation. And then the second requirement is that when giving away heads, eyes, marrow, brain, country, wealth, wife, and children, a bodhisattva does it happily without grasping thought. This is the simile. Just like a near-death person returns to life, he feels extremely happy and cannot control himself. So this is comparing the happiness when a bodhisattva doing the giving perfection with the happiness of a near-death person that returns to life. So we need to do something happily. This is very important. Even when listening to the Dharma, or like when I'm sharing the Dharma with y'all, we need to do it with a happy mind. We need to do that happily. There is a differentiation, between listening to the Dharma with just a neutral feeling, not happy and not sad as well, just neutral. I'm listening with a very calm mind and with happy mind. There's a there's different in the merit actually. So if someone doing something happily, especially when doing something good happily, the merit, the quality of the merit will be higher than when we do something with a neutral feeling. And then the third one is when a bodhisattva gives, he gives to all and not for his own sake to achieve Buddhahood. So we've seen this in terms of the great compassion. The fourth one is when bodhisattva gives, he contemplates on the qualities of a bodhisattva as the utmost being in the universe. So these four thinking or requirements make the giving perfection fulfill the other six perfections. All right, now we are moving on to the mental enlightenment, the last part of the path of wisdom. And this is characterized by the realization of non-arising phenomena, which is the non-retrogression stage, and it is equal to an arhat, meaning a bodhisattva at this stage, if he or she wants to become an arhat, they can, but they don't want to. They want to continue on the journey until the perfect enlightenment. So on this stage, a bodhisattva is basically realize the reality as they are. And there is one stanza, one verse that says, one who sees the Dharma sees the blessed one. And it works the other way around. One who sees the blessed one sees the Dharma. So if you want to see the Buddha, we have to see or realize the Dharma. Because whenever we realize the Dharma, that is when we see the real Buddha, not just in the physical form of the Buddha. So this statement, whoever sees the dependent origination sees the Dharma, or whoever sees the Dharma sees the Buddha. Well, how or what is the step of this conclusion? Because we see dependent origination has no self-nature. And then dependent origination itself is a Dharma. Dharma is a Buddha. Therefore, dependent origination is the Buddha because they both consist of no self-nature. And this basic understanding, this basic doctrine will then develop into later Mahayana school that says Buddha, sentient beings, and mind are three indifferent things. There are three same thing: the Buddha, the sentient beings, and mind, because they all have no self-nature. All right, so again, in this section, we have to understand the three emptiness. The first one is empty of self, and then the second one is empty of phenomena. The third one, like what I just said, empty of non-phenomena or empty of emptiness. You don't want to say anything is the safest way in this sutra. So no matter what the objects are, as long as there is grasping or clinging, it is to be abandoned. So it is to say that when we grasp into the teaching of the Buddha, it is false because the problem is not in the object, the problem is in the action or in the verb, right? So if you say, I I want to listen to the Dharma no matter what, it's not correct because we already have this kind of clinging into the Dharma, right? And then why? Because the Dharma is just like a raft. When the purpose is achieved, you need to abandon it. You don't want to carry the raft all along the way when you arrive at the other shore. You just want to abandon it when you arrive or you reach the shore. So this kind of thinking might remind you yesterday about this content from Gandhari Mahayana scripture that says almost basically the same thing. It says that what is emptiness according to the ultimate truth? It's not easy. Speech, language, words, thought, vocalization is all beyond origination, beyond sound, and so on. What is beyond speech, beyond sound, beyond origination? There is no designation, and there is no non-designation, and there is no mental construction as well. When there is no mental construction, it is called empty, according to the ultimate truth. And in this sutra, we'll encounter a repeated trope by comparing the merits. It happens in almost all Mahayana Sutra. They like to compare merits. They like to promote their own teaching by saying like this. If there were a person memorizes this sutra such that he or she could teach a four-line verse from it to others, right? Such a great merit. This person's merit would exceed a person who were to fill a 3 chilial kosam with the 7 kinds of jewels and give them away charitably. So here it is comparing two concepts. This is actually the Buddhist make-up word, which means the whole universe. So if someone giving the best thing to the whole universe, the merit is still fewer compared to a person who memorizes this sutra, even just a 4-line verse from this sutra. So can you imagine that? If you do such a great thing on earth, your merit is still not comparable to the person who just recite or memorize a single piece of this sutra. So about 3 chiliokosam, actually the Sanskrit word is Tri Sahasra Mahasahasra Loka Dhatu. In Chinese, it's called San Qian Da Qian Shijie. And what does it mean? So we have one small world, we call it the galaxy, like our Earth, our Milky Way system, that is the one small world. It consists of, here on the left, so here is our Buddhist cosmology looking from the front. So you can see all the layer from up from the heavenly realms down to hell. So at the very bottom here, we got hell, we got 8 cold hells and 8 hot hells. Do hells have cold hell? Yes, in Buddhism, we have cold hells. And then we have the preta, or the ghostly, hungry ghost realm. And then we also have, here is the Mount Sumeru representing our human realm. So in our human realm, we have animal, ghosts, demons, and even some lower level devas, lower level deities living with us together. We are sharing the same space and time. Time, not really, but we are sharing the same space. And then up into above the Mount Sumeru, we starting to reach the heavenly realm. So we have six heavenly realms. We have 17 or 16 Rupa Dhatu, form heavenly realm, and then formless realm according to our meditation absorptions level. These all, right? These all here from heavenly realms down to hell is called one small world. 1,000 of this one small world is called small chiliocosm. 1,000 of small chiliocosm is called medium. 1,000 of the medium is called the great. So by combining these three, it's called three chiliocosm, which is one Buddha world, meaning one Buddha, the sound or the teaching of one Buddha could cover such three chiliocosm, which consists of one, yeah, how many is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 billion, right? 1 billion worlds. So what it wants to say is that there are many Buddhas and we have multiverse. And here is the aerial view from the top down. We have the Mount Sumeru with our four great continents, with all the realms here. And this is another picture for our realm. Okay. And the practice prescribed in the Diamond Sutra, another practice is 10 Dharma practices for the wisdom-oriented person. So it's not just six perfections that we've just seen elsewhere. There is these 10 Dharma practices. The first one is copying or writing down the sutra. So if you think about this, it's still practiced today in mostly East Asian countries. They mostly write down or copying down a Heart Sutra, right? And then if you remember yesterday, we were talking about Gandhari Buddhist manuscript. Those people in the past were also practicing this copying or writing down this sutra. Why? Because the sutra needs to be copied and copied and copied in order to preserve the Dharma. And then giving the written sutra to the others, bestowal of wisdom upon others, listening to the teaching is also one of the 10 Dharma practices. Study and read, accept and memorize, reciting the sutra, explaining to others, contemplating the sutra, and then practicing the sutra. So these 10 are the 10 Dharma practices for the wisdom-oriented person. Why? Because we also have another set for the faith-oriented person in what we call 10 great vow practices. So they are pay homage to all Buddhas because these practices are suitable for those who are having a strong faith to the Buddha. So paying homage to all Buddhas is suitable for them. Praise all the Buddhas, make abundant offerings, repentance, rejoice in others' merits, or what we call sympathetic joy, request the Buddhas to continue teaching, request the Buddhas to remain in the world, follow the teaching of the Buddhas at all times, accommodate and benefit all living beings, and lastly, transference of merits. So point number 6 and 7 seems to be irrelevant in this world because we are no longer having our Sakyamuni Buddha with us, but we need to understand it as we have many Buddhas, right? We've just seen in the explanation on the previous slide just now that there are many Buddhas living in different world at this time. So by saying requesting the Buddhas to continue teaching, meaning We are requesting not only our Sakyamuni Buddha, but we are requesting the Buddhas from other world for them to continue teaching and remain in their world for the benefit of all beings. All right. And then we have four kinds of persons, right? First one is one who understands immediately. This is just immediately after one Dharma talk, those person can realize nirvana. And then the second type of person is one who understands after detailed explanation. Um, if the first one can realize nirvana by only one verse, the second type is one verse plus long detailed explanation. The third one is one who needs to be instructed. So this kind of person can achieve nirvana in this life, but they need to be instructed again and again and again. And then lastly, the most inferior type of person is one who merely learns by words, pada paramo. So it means that even though we are already listening to the Dharma again and again, years by years, we'll still kind of remaining on our stage. We don't have any progression in our practice. This is the fourth kind. So the bad news is the first two types is out of stock already. The third type is limited edition. We can rarely find this kind of person today. But then the good news is the fourth type of person is on sale because it's everywhere. It's almost every one of us. And that's why we need to keep learning, hoping that one day we will become one of the first three types above. And we can soon achieve liberation, enlightenment, and save all beings. And also, the 10 Dharma practices that we have mentioned before, the first one is copying the sutra, right? By copying down or writing down the sutra, we are shifting the center of the teaching from oral teaching into the written one. So at the time of the Buddha, up until the first century, before the technology of writing was invented, this teaching, the teaching of the Buddha, was transmitted orally, right? From teacher to the student, from teacher to disciple, generations through generation. That is why the Dharma reciter or the teacher is very important in the oral tradition, because we can only learn the Dharma through a teacher, right? By their instruction orally. And the place to do that, the center of the Dharma is at the monastery or at the temple. One needs to go to the temple to visit the teacher in order to listen and achieve the teaching from the teacher. And then the center here is the Buddha and the Sangha. During the times of the Buddha himself is the one who is worth to be visited. But then after the time of the Buddha is the disciple of the Buddha, or the monastic community are the ones who are worthy to be visited. And since the Dharma was written down in a scripture form, in a book form, the center of the Dharma or of the teaching shift place from a person to a book. That's why in almost every Mahayana sutras, we can see that if you place this sutra in a book form, right, into anywhere in your house will become a shrine. All devas, all deities and sages will come to this place to to put reference into the sutra. That is because it represents the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So the place is not merely at the monastery, but at any spot that have these scriptures, this Dharma. And the center shift from the Buddha and Sangha to the Dharma. Like in today's society, right? You don't need to visit the Bodhi Monastery in New Jersey in order to listening to the Dharma, in order to participate in the retreat this year. You can just sit on your own place at your own pace and then log into Zoom and you can listen to any Dharma you want. So the place here in today's society is any spot. And the emphasis when we studying Buddhism is not too relying onto the person anymore. It's more about the teaching because everyone can get access to the teaching anywhere. You open the internet, you can Google everything, even you can ask artificial intelligence, you have ChatGPT and everything else. So the Dharma is in your palm. You take your phone out, type into whatever questions you want, and you get the answer immediately. You go onto the YouTube, type into whatever topic you want to listen. If you like it, you click on it and you listen to it for an hour or two. If you don't like the teacher, you can just skip and change, looking for the other teacher that suit you. So the center is really in the Dharma or the teaching, especially in the movement of Mahayana, right? But then we'll see in tomorrow in Ugra Paripurja, in the early Bodhisattva practices, because before all of this written form taken place, a Bodhisattva should visit a monastery. So that sutra tomorrow and the following day we'll discuss and we'll see a lot about the importance of visiting a monastery. Why? Well, we'll see on that day because if you think about it, we have one challenging question today in our society. If we can do everything on Zoom, if we can do anything remotely online at home, and we can access any Dharma at anywhere and at any time, what is the significance of a teacher? What is the significance of a temple anymore in this society, right? So that sutra will provide us a very beautiful answer. And then we have another practice here, which is forbearance. So here, the Buddha says, in a former lifetime, my body was cut into pieces by King Kalinga. If you've ever heard about this story in Jataka story and everywhere else in the Buddhist scripture. At that time, I was not abiding in the notions of self, person, sentient being, or lifespan. Why not? Because if I had been holding to the notions of self, person, sentient beings, or lifespan, I would have felt ill will toward Kalinga. So at this point, the Bodhisattva was practicing forbearance. And in Buddhist teaching, we have three types of forbearance. This is from Venerable Yin-Shun, even though we have many other combinations, 4 types, 5 types, depending on which sutra you are referring to. But basically, we have these 3 types. The first one is forbearance regarding to harms, not to be disturbed by anger. This is mental patience. You don't get anger. And then the second one is hardships, not to be disturbed by circumstances. This is patience regarding to our physique, like the weather, too hot, too cold, a lot of mosquitoes and stuff like that. We have to be able to be patient. And then the third one is confidence or acceptance. So the word shanti in Sanskrit could also mean confidence or acceptance. Acceptance of what? With regard to the truth of things as they are. So the third type of forbearance is what every Mahayana practitioner want to achieve. And this is the higher or the superior type of forbearance, and it is the realization, or you are able to accept the fact that everything is empty of self-nature. You are able to accept or understand the truth that things is neither a reason or non-reason. So you are free from any duality mind or binary way of thinking, exist or non-exist, rising or declining. And here I quote a very beautiful verse from Santideva. It says like this: those who cause me suffering are like Buddhas bestowing their blessings. Since they lead me to liberating paths, why should I get angry with them? Don't they obstruct your virtuous practice? No, there is no virtuous practice greater than patience. Therefore, I will never get angry with those who cause me suffering. If because of my own shortcomings, I don't practice patience with my enemy, it is not he, but I who prevents me from practicing patience, the cause of accumulating merit. So it's giving us another way of thinking, different perspective and motivation when we are disturbed by somebody else, right? And there's one key takeaway from this verse is that never blame someone else, right? Anything that happened to us is purely the result of our own action. And there is no reason to blame someone else for our own anger. Like people can disturb us, people can try to make us angry, but it is ourselves who determine whether we want to be angry or not, right? You can be disturbed, but still smile, but still be happy. So there is no connection between, oh, I'm angry because him, because them. All right. And then we are entering into path of skillful means. So the first stage is aspiration again. And in this part, like what I said in the very beginning of this talk, that sagehood is not an on and off matter, but it is a matter of gradually. It is a matter of completing the stages step by step. So like in the path of Arahant, even though the stream enterer is already considered sagehood, it's still considered only the first stage, and we need to go and complete the practice up until the last stage, which is arahantship. In Mahayana, at this point, the Bodhisattva has attained the seventh stage, right? Equal to arahantship, but then they need to complete the path by keep going up until the 10th stage to become a Buddha. So it is gradually, just like when we do fitness, right? This way we start by very lightweight, right? And then we gradually increase the weight. And it is a matter of what I call perfectification, even though we have the practice of six perfections: giving perfection, morality perfection, right? Patience perfections, energy perfections, concentration perfections, and wisdom perfections. These perfections is not the end result, but it is a process of perfection. So what is the difference between giving as a kind of kindness, right? When you donate some money to the temple, what is the difference of this kind of action with giving perfection as prescribed in the Bodhisattva path? The difference lies on the perfection process. So by giving perfection, it means that we have the higher standard of giving perfection, right? But then when we are doing giving perfection, we try to perfect our giving, right? So for example, the the higher standard of giving perfection in the Bodhisattva path is for someone to be able to give away their life, to give away their head, their hands, their eyes, their ears to somebody else. But then at this point, I still cannot do that. But I have something in my mind. I want to perfect my giving so that I'm able to do that according to that standard. Also, another way of thinking the giving perfection is that before I was giving with this kind of mind, I have done something good. I have done this giving to that temple. I gave some food, so on and so forth. But then now I want to perfect my giving by making it trippy pure. Like there is no I who is doing the giving. There is no recipient of my giving, and there is no the act or the things given. So by doing this, we are doing the giving perfection. So we are trying to perfect as the verb, the action. And then always start with a baby step, but never wait to start. Always start with something small that is within your own capacity, right? Even though sometimes I understand that the prescription in the Buddhist scripture is kind of hard to do because it seems irrational, right? When you are asked to give away your life to the people that even you don't know, okay? So don't worry about that first. Just do your own part first. Okay, what can you give today? Okay, I can be a volunteer at the temple today. Then do it. Start with a baby step. Don't worry about the higher standard in the text yet. And then for supernatural content, reduce it to the human level. Enjoy the process. Don't worry about whether you are progressing or regressing, because regression is normal, right? And then on the path of skillful means, we have the mental expansion. This is the practical aspect. There are two missions. The first one is save all beings, and the second one is adorn the Buddha lands. So, like I said before, make it humane. We are not yet the sagehood, but we can make it like more human. You don't have to have like a supernatural power in order to save all beings, right? You can start by helping each other, start with yourself, follow traffic rules, becoming a vegetarian, and protect yourself to protect others, and so on. This is really human way to do the mission. And then the second mission is regarding to the place, adorn the Buddha land. So the land of Sakyamuni Buddha is our earth. We are sharing the same earth with each other, right? As human being. So how to adorn it, how to decorate the Buddha land in a humane way, make your city better, decorate the temple, putting trash into the garbage, clean your house, clean a temple, and so on, right? So I quote this, be like Guan Yin. In the Lotus Sutra, you all know Guan Yin, Avalokite's Bodhisattva, right? Um, there's a quote in the Lotus Sutra that says, if someone must be saved by whatever body or role, the Bodhisattva will manifest in that body and role. So imagine you all as parents, whatever your children want, you always try your best to fulfill their wishes, right? So it works the same way like in Bodhisattva path. Whatever sentient beings like your neighbor or you see a beggar want something from you, then you want to be that someone. You want to be that role as a giver to fulfill their wishes. So more on this tomorrow, and I think we can stop here now to see if there's any questions, comments, or thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Your time is up. Larry, can we wrap up the lecture, or anybody want any questions or some addition or something that you have any addition and also share with all of us?
Good morning. Venerable, you can bring a lecture. You are excellent. Derek Jeter, thank you.
Okay, Anne-Marie, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we have to practice all this thing, Anne-Marie. You have to come to the class. Right? We have to study all this thing during the week, every day.
Well, Faye, this venerable has to come to Bodhi Monastery. You have to come to New Jersey.
Yeah, he will.
Excellent.
If you come.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Okay, Larry, can we wrap up so everybody can rest?
All right.
Yes.
3 bows to the Buddha. First bow. Second bow. Third bow. Bow to teacher. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a great, wonderful Dharma day.
Yes.